Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel, hit that notifications button, and get a new notification whenever a new video is uploaded. Let's talk about the fight, the fantastic fight between Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. We'll talk about the fight. We'll talk about the preview video as well that I did and all the stuff that we saw that were there in this fight, and some of the things that surprised us as well. I think it was a terrific fight. Two guys that were able to consistently adjust. Very, very high level stuff from a guy that is, a hardcore boxing fan that wants to observe the technical elements of the sport. It was wonderful stuff to behold, to be honest with you, away from all the drama of it. And I know a lot of people are very disappointed with the end of the fight. We'll get to that in a moment. But in terms of the way the fight went, first and foremost, I have to say this. I felt that the DAZN team did a terrific job. I'm not sure if maybe there were a few too many commentators there, but that aside, I thought they did a terrific job in their impartiality. You had Mora and Froch who had Canelo slightly up. You had Mannix who had Billy Joe Saunders slightly up. But they weren't just giving Canelo credit for the work he was doing. They were also giving Saunders credit for the work he was doing. So it was really, really good stuff. And we're not always used to that on neither American nor British broadcasts, to be honest with you. So hats off to them. I was really impressed with them for that. Additionally, look, when it came to the injury, you had both, you had Carl Froch, one of the warriors of the sport, telling you, with that sort of injury, he's seen it many occasions. On those occasions, the fight ends. There's no carrying on. A lot of people are sitting there going, Billy Joe Saunders quit. And because he's such a brash character, it's easy for a lot of people to just say that and accuse him of it. The reality is somewhat different. And I've been very consistent, whoever gets this injury, whenever they get it. And not just this injury, but other serious injuries too. So whether you're talking about Kell Brook or Daniel Dubois, whether you're talking about Vitaly Klitschko and he ripped his shoulder out and he was up against Bird and he didn't come out. These things are not quits. They're prize fighters. Canelo Alvarez went back to his corner and told Eddie Reynoso, this fight's over. And this is why he was showboating, even though it was a tough fight, in the rest of that round, because he realized it's done. And why did he say it was over? He told Eddie Reynoso, I broke his cheek. He's literally punched him and felt his skull cave inwards, right? And when we're talking about the skull, we're talking about the area of the orbital bone where the eye socket is, the bit that holds your eyeball in your head, right? It's a very, very serious injury. And from what Tibbs has said, Billy Joe Saunders' coach, they tested his eyesight. He couldn't see. So they said, you're not going out for it. So it's not even that he said, I quit. But even if he did, I wouldn't hold it against him. But Billy looked all over the place. He was sitting there. He looked concussed. He looked concussed because he'd eaten some big shots in that round. So you can't criticize Billy Joe Saunders for that. You saw some high-level stuff. Let's talk about some of the things we spoke about in the preview video that we saw here. Obviously, Canelo Alvarez's movement where he was coming in and trying to shoot off the jab, we saw that. And Billy looked quite tense early on. And I had him 2-1 down after 3 rounds. I agreed with Mannix's scorecard early on. And then Billy started to drop his hands and he started to look comfortable and he started to find a rhythm. And that thing we spoke about where he pops and gets out, he was doing it very well. There was one moment where Canelo threw a massive left hook or an uppercut, sort of like a shovel hook, and he missed by miles. And you're thinking, Billy's finding a rhythm here. And just like I said in the preview, Billy's not like Lara to move around the ring, come in and out, and then move around the ring. He'll create a circle within a circle, and he will move and circle around Canelo, but stay close to him. He's not going to run. He's going to be on the edge of the inside of that pocket. And it was rare that Canelo had his back up against the ropes. There were a few occasions, and when he was there, he didn't keep him there. There was one early veteran move that Mora picked up on, props to Mora, where he ducked down and he gave him a little bump to create that space and move out. There were other occasions where he would duck under the shot to get away. He did really well, Billy, but often he would eat that single power shot, whether it was to the arm or to the body. And to the majority of fighters, you consider an arm to be a block. If someone hits you and you're catching it on a bicep or the shoulder, that's a typical Floyd Mayweather type block, right? But with Canelo, it's such a thudding shot. Although you're not going to say it's a scoring shot, it's having an effect on Billy, right? So you know that these things are investments for later on in the fight to try and slow Billy Joe Saunders down. But Billy then adapted and he started to become more aggressive. And we spoke about in the preview video as well how when he's up close, I did say if things aren't going Billy's way, he will adapt and he will get closer and he will let his hands go. He's not going to be a guy who's just going to be happy to lose the fight on points. And you saw him start to take those risks. And what we said in the preview video was that he throws a very vicious, short hook where he gets the elbow up, and as he's throwing it, he'll throw the hook down. And he landed that twice on Canelo. One of them was coming out of a clinch in round 5. So, and that was a round where he really started to turn it around. Was it 4 or 5? One of those two, where he started to really find that rhythm. And prior to that, he landed a lovely little uppercut. We also spoke about his sneaky little uppercut. It was an uppercut followed by a hook. Then he started to land sporadically. I thought he should have been doing this a lot more, to the body with that left backhand. And he started to look really good. He had to make an adjustment though, because just like we spoke about again in the preview video, that thing that Canelo has where he leans back, when he does that, when he's leaning forward and back with that high guard, as he's coming back, he's forcing you, if he's shifting his weight onto his back foot, to overreach, to come close to him, to reach him. He wants you to come into his personal space so he can counter you with those really crisp, well-timed, fast counter punches. And you saw early in the fight, before Billy made an adjustment, he was struggling to find a home for that left hand. The jab was finding a home, but the left hand, when he tried to throw it, his back foot would come off the canvas, and he was almost overstretching, almost crossing his feet, which you never see from Billy, unless you know it's going to be a wide hook and he's stepping in and he's doing it as part of a shift. He's usually very technically sound. He was making that error. And he was making that error because he couldn't reach Canelo and he was getting frustrated. So Billy started to adjust too and started to move more. He'd use a jab to blind and spin off to the outside left of the shoulder of Canelo, something we spoke about again in the preview video as being vital. And that way, if he was to step in, he's outside that shoulder and away from that right hand at a distance. And that's when you started to see him land the left hand more consistently as well. But Canelo, being Canelo Alvarez, he made the adjustment too. And he began to, initially he was throwing a right uppercut and he was trying to take Billy's head off. You saw him adjust to lower the trajectory of the uppercut to shoot it towards the solar plexus. So when Billy would come in close, I might not be able to reach your head if you're leaning out and you're looking to pop in and out of a shot, but I can reach your body. So he'd start to throw that uppercut to the solar plexus and he started to land a lot of shots to the body. It was just really, really good high level stuff from both guys. Really, really impressive stuff. One of the things I did say, I believe I put this in the preview video, right? But because, like I said, I did a 30-minute preview video and then I thought, you know what, this is too long. So I redid a 20-minute one. I'm not too sure whether I put it in the final cut of the 20-minute one. I'm pretty sure I did, though. But what I said was that Canelo has improved in every area. He's not comparable to the fighter that fought Floyd Mayweather. Okay, he's improved massively. He learned a lot from that fight. But I also explained that additionally to that, with Canelo's foot speed, although his footwork has become dramatically better, with his foot speed, that's a natural ailment, I guess you could say, that he has, a natural limitation. And additionally to learning how to cut off the ring more effectively, what you're also seeing is a slowing down of the opponents that he's facing. In other words, as he goes through the weight categories, there are trade-offs that happen. The bigger, heavier guys that he's going to face, like Smith, like Fielding, like Yildirim, all these sorts of guys, even Danny Jacobs, who's actually a very athletic middleweight. But if you look at the guys with that, you know, he's facing as he starts to go through weight categories, they're bigger, stronger, and hit harder. But they don't move quite as fast as the guys at 154. They're not going to move as fast. They're not going to be as fleet as Floyd, as Lara. And because of that, he looks as though he doesn't have that issue anymore. But with Billy, things could potentially come to the fore again because he does move like they do. He is a natural middleweight with great feet. And you saw some of those issues as Billy started to adjust. You saw that there were times when Canelo was having to reset and he was struggling in those middle rounds to get to Billy as consistently as he would have liked, to cut off the ring on Billy. Billy was in the center ring for much of the fight, just outside the bang on center. He's rotating around him. He's not moving back to the ropes consistently. One thing we didn't see as much that I mentioned in the preview video is when Canelo steps in, he'll step in with quite a long jab. I think one of the reasons is because Billy was consistently getting him to turn and reset. So he had to shorten his shots and look to time Billy on the way in with those power shots. So he became, he started to focus more on the counter punch and pressure fighting rather than trying to initiate with that first long jab to get close to Billy. So that was a great little move from Billy, but also a great little adjustment from Canelo to recognize that and not to get too reckless with trying to land shots that weren't there to be landed. There were moments where Billy's movement, that little pot shot and getting out, like I said, He looked a little bit wild, Canelo. I think it was a shovel hook come uppercut where he threw it and it just went miles away. You're starting to think Billy's finding a rhythm here. So it was just really good high-level chess play and stuff. What we also said in the preview video is one thing Billy had to be careful of is because he ducks a lot to create defense. And in the middle of the ring, he was making Canelo miss quite a lot with those ducks. He was doing really well. But I explained that Canelo has the ability to adjust the trajectory of his shot rather than throw it up. He'll just throw it down. There are some guys that can't produce that level of power when they're throwing shots low. Canelo's not one of those guys. And I explained how there was a danger that Billy Joe could potentially duck into a power shot. I explained this in the preview video, and that's exactly what happened for that devastating shot, which essentially ended the fight. Billy got greedy, and he threw a very wide hook, a leaping lead hook, which is a very, very dangerous shot to throw, particularly against a guy like Canelo, who will lean back. And you saw him pull back and encounter him with that right uppercut. Now, if that right uppercut bounces off the forehead or misses him, or, you know, if he just put his head in perhaps a bit of a different area, these are little minor details sometimes where luck comes into play. He fell right into the trajectory of that shot, into the line of that shot, which I say luck, but it's an error from Billy, and Canelo capitalized on it. And he landed right on that sweet spot of the eye, okay? Right on that spot to break that orbital bone. If that doesn't happen, who knows how the fight would have gone on to develop. Billy was certainly finding a rhythm in that fight, and I wouldn't have been surprised to see him continue to do that and perhaps go on to outbox Canelo late on. Traditionally, though, he has had stamina issues, and although he looked like he was in terrific shape, the investment to the body makes me feel as though Canelo would have continued to slow him down and would have got to him eventually anyway. That would have been my initial prediction. That would have been my initial thought, having seen the fight since. That's how I think the fight would have played out. But you're talking about two very high-level guys, and they both showed their skills. I thought it was a terrific fight. Billy Joe Saunders showed that he's definitely an elite-level fighter as far as I'm concerned. When you talk about Canelo Alvarez, he's now reaching the peak of his powers now. He's getting to that point where you're just thinking, is he beatable at super middleweight? If you're looking at, in terms of the tools that different fighters have got, I think Billy Joe would have been the toughest opponent he could possibly face right now. Golovkin, obviously a wonderful fighter, one of the great middleweights, the best of this generation as far as I'm concerned. I felt he beat Canelo. I've made my thoughts clear on that. And I don't think people understand how good Golovkin is at a lot of things. People just think he's a pressure fighting power puncher, a pressure fighting by walking you down and throwing quite mechanical shots. Golovkin is a very, very talented fighter, and people don't realize it. But he's 39 years old. And Canelo Alvarez is now at the peak of his powers, and I don't think Golovkin would beat Canelo now. So when you take Golovkin out of it and you start to look around, Caleb Plant's being spoken of. Caleb Plant is a guy who I rate highly. Before people even really knew who he was or were talking about him, I put out a video here, and I was talking about different things, and I mentioned Caleb Plant. And I said, this is a guy you guys need to look out of. He's going to the top. I love sweet hands. I love his skill set. But one of the things he does, he will leap into power shots. And sometimes both his feet will come off the ground. He'll leap into them. We saw what happened to Billy Joe Saunders when he made the one error of doing that today. You know, he got away with it quite a bit, actually, Billy Joe, because there were times, like I said earlier in the fight, where he's lifting his back foot off the floor. He couldn't find a home for that power shot. But to really drastically leap into a wide shot that was just out of character, that's when the damage came. Plant does things like that quite a lot. Often he'll throw straight shots when he's doing it rather than big wide hooks. But Canelo's the sort of guy who will just literally lean back, slip a shot, and then counter you with big, big shots. And I think he's all wrong for Caleb Plant. Of the guys that are currently left that he's not fought, the one who I actually think stylistically will give him problems is Demetrius Andrade. But I don't know if Andrade would have, I don't think he would have the gas tank, the stamina to hold out against Canelo. And because he's also a guy that leaps into shots and can lose his positioning, although I think he would start well early, I think Canelo would again figure out his patterns. So when I'm looking at the landscape at the moment, I think he's going to go on to dominate this division. And then when he moves up, like I said, it's an interesting thing that the foot speed disparity and the movement disparity lessens the more he goes up. So when he's going to go up to light heavyweight and he's going to face some of those light heavyweights, it'll be interesting to see the guys that maybe people fear and are considered brutes, whether they'll do as well as someone like a Bivol? Will Beterbiev cause... I mean, if Beterbiev lands a short shot on Canelo or indeed anyone, he could take him out. And Billy Joe Saunders, like I said, did have an effect on Canelo today. He was feeling some of those shots. That forward momentum and trajectory, they slowed down when he was eating some of those uppercuts and hooks. He was feeling them. And if he's feeling them, well, if Beterbiev starts to land flush, Canelo's in trouble. But because that power is short power and he might look to walk down Canelo, Canelo has the upper body movement and the foot speed against a guy of that size to be able to be countering him and moving around. Would he be able to do that against Bivol? Maybe not. So as he moves forward, it might be the more mobile light heavyweights who are able to find that happy medium between movement and power who are going to be able to cause him an upset. At the moment, at the super middleweight category, I think he's going to go on to dominate now. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with me that it was a terrific fight? How did you score the fight? Are you one of those people that feels that Billy Joe Saunders just quit? I certainly don't, but I'm sure there's going to be a number of you out there who are. You're going to be very keen to tell everybody how delighted you were to see Billy Joe Saunders quit. Where does Billy Joe go from here? This is a terrible, terrible injury. And, you know, breaking an orbital bone, a lot of fighters that get that sort of injury, they never return the same way. They never return the same way. So although you keep seeing these, I keep seeing these things on my timeline, bullies are usually punks. He punked out. I've seen fighters go through worse and survive and stuff like that. Listen, it's easy, like I said, to sit out here and say that. But skill set, he's got what it takes. And we saw he showed an ability to adjust and step forward and go to war. He tried to fight Canelo. He just got his face broken at a key moment. Is that the end of Billy Joe Saunders' career? He would have made an awful lot of money now. What happens from here for Billy Joe Saunders? Thank you for watching, everybody. I'm sure I've forgotten a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to tell you guys about, but I might make a follow-up video if these things come to mind. Take care. God bless.